All right, happy holidays and happy new year. Welcome back to the Ketodontist Podcast. My name is Dr. Matthew Standridge. I'm a practicing dentist here in Yates Center, Kansas, in the United States, also known as the hay capital of the world. As you know, I love saying that. I am also a certified primal health coach and, as of recently, a certified fitness trainer through the ISSA. Since the beginning of 2016, I have lost and maintained 90 pounds by adopting a primal ketogenic lifestyle to help correct my metabolism, heal inflammatory issues, and improve mental clarity and cognition. So while this show is not meant to be seen as giving specific medical advice, after seeing the improvement in my and my family's quality of life through diet, lifestyle change, I was inspired to spread the message of healthy, real nutrition to my patients, my community, and now you. This show will also track my further journey to even more weight loss and increased health, as well as help guide others along their own path to better health and wellness. So if you're new to the show, welcome. I'm glad you guys found your way over here. This show really was started to help clear some of the confusion in this low-carb sphere and around keto, around paleo. And really, if this is your first episode, this is going to be a whammy of a first episode. So you're in for a treat here. For those of you who are regular listeners to the show, I'm glad you're back. It's the loyal fan base that form the backbone of what we're accomplishing here. And that is to spread the message of healthy living and reverse some of these epidemic chronic diseases, especially when it comes to these diabetes-related diseases. And it's because of you good people that this show continues to grow. But we can't let up. We can't let our foot off the gas. There's so much misinformation being spread that is up to us. It is our duty to get the right information out there and also to lead by example. So if you haven't yet, I call on you, share the show, leave us a 5-star review or a written review. It's through these steps that we reach more people and make an impact on the world. But I can't do it without your help. I hope everybody had a great holiday season. I know we did. We had the whole fan family over to our place and didn't go off the rails. Just really focused on enjoying family, enjoying the time together instead of, gorging on treats and everything. And really, it was just a solid time. And there were also some other exciting developments, but we'll get into those later. I don't really want to bloat up the introduction here a little bit because I have two guests today. So today's kind of interesting because not only is it the first time I've had dual guests, but they're both repeat guests, and so that's pretty interesting. If you followed this show for any length of time, you know that I talk about a group called Ketogains quite a bit, and I've also tracked my progress and results through numerous Ketogains Bootcamps. And I've also had both of the co-founders of this group on the show before. Well, here I am having both of those co-founders back, both Luis Villasenor and Tyler Cartwright, founders of Ketogains. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hey, good to see you.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, so I'm so excited to have both of you guys on here. And so for the folks who haven't listened to our 5 or 6 hours of content from 4 episodes between the two of you, because we went ridiculously long, especially on Tyler's episodes. But we had multi-part episodes with each one of these guys. So if you want to learn a little bit more about the backstory of each one of them, we have plenty of episodes for you. Go back, listen to those. If I remember right from memory, Luis was episodes 2 and 3, and Tyler were episodes 11 and 12. And so go back, listen to those if you want a little bit more. But I want you guys to both introduce yourself. Luis, I'll start with you. Give us a little bit of a background of who you are, where you come from, and this whole thing around Ketogains.
Okay. Do you hear me correctly first?
What's that?
Am I still? Just wanted to check if I'm not muted. Okay.
Oh, yeah, no, you're good.
You're good.
Perfect. Okay. So, well, I'm from Mexico City, Mexico, and I started very much my career in nutrition out of an interest on improving my physique. Most people don't believe me, but I was an overweight kid. And then through dieting, lots of cardio, and then eventually strength training, I managed to go from fat to chubby. But I never really got to where I was, where I wanted to be. So I started to study and research in a more serious way. And eventually I found out about keto. And at the time I found out about keto, I was in one of the worst times of my life because I was suffering through a mild period of depression and anorexia. So let's say that I managed to go from chubby, overweight kid to, I like to joke, I ended up like Michael Jackson on the, what's the album you say I look like?
Michael Jackson. You are not alone.
Yeah, like that. The long hair and the dusty white face. Yeah, exactly. So I overdid myself on the diet part, and I hit rock bottom. And basically, I thought what I was doing was wrong, and there should be a way to get thinner and get ripped healthily, right? Mm-hmm. So basically I started researching, and what I found was that the old style or the old school bodybuilders did a diet that was focused on protein and healthy fats. And they took all the carbs a few months prior contest, and very much it was keto. It was not called keto. It was very much called a bodybuilding pre-contest diet. And when I started researching more on that, I stumbled upon a protocol called Body Opus. Mm-hmm. And then it was, I think, by Dan Duquesne, and that eventually was the blueprint for one of the protocols by Lyle McDonald, which is the Target and the Glycogen diets. So that's what, in the end, led me to keto, and I started practicing it, and very differently than most people who do keto for weight loss. I actually did keto first, not just to gain muscle, because I've been on keto for almost 19 years now, mm-hmm. but also because it helps me be in control of what I eat. So before keto, I was very prone, as most of us, I think, to be, you taste a pizza and then you want to have the whole pizza. You have a bit of a donut and you want to finish the whole box, right? If you're a bit OCD like me, there's some foods that either you touch or you just don't touch, because even if you may have a high willpower, in the end, it's stronger than you, right? Yeah. So it helped me be in control of myself and be in control of my macros and be just at peace. And that's basically what I started doing: strength training, controlling my macros. I started to get results. And eventually, what I did was start to write what I was doing, because a lot of people started to ask me, how do you do it? What do you eat? How do you train? And just to keep it short, that eventually became the blueprint for the FAQ on Ketogains on Reddit. And then we moved on to Facebook, and then we started coaching professionally. We got a few certifications, then we got a few more, and then a lot more. And now we are a full-fledged company and basically coaches people and other coaches to be successful, not only just, in getting lean, but more so what I like to say is in educating people and empowering them to achieve success, not only just, again, for fat loss, but to change their health and mind outcomes. Basically, we're helping people improve themselves.
I love that you guys talked about that you went with one. I'm sorry, guys. I'm getting some feedback off of somebody's speakers, I think, but that you guys got some certifications. Then you got a few more, and then you got a few more. Your guys' dedication to continued learning is very commendable and something I really respect. So I just wanted to point that out. So, all right, thanks, Luis. Tyler, how about you? Give us a little bit of background of who you are, what got you into this. You have a great story, and go ahead and tell our listeners a little bit about it.
So I couldn't help but in my head when Luis was explaining the certifications in my brain, I was like, and you'll get you get two friends and then they get two friends, and I was like, wait a minute. So it is kind of addictive, though, admittedly, when you start to look at certifications and you realize where one is really good but kind of falls down in some other areas. You start to seek out a certification or somebody that's really competent, that's offering some kind of teaching in that other area.
Right.
And that leads down this inevitable rabbit trail of chasing people who are experts in different disciplines. And so when I started this, I was almost dead. I weighed 500 pounds, actually a little over 500 pounds, over the course of 11 years of doing literally everything wrong until I figured out how to do it right. Managed to stumble and fumble my way forward to, just under 300 pounds lost. I did very, very briefly touch 300 pounds down, but I don't ever claim it because it happened one day after I basically starved myself to see if I could do it. About 295 pounds down was the lowest that I got, to a 5. Maintained since then. But, interestingly, Luis and I are both pop culture nerds, which is why we can sit around and just bust out laughing at stupid Transformers or G.I. Joe references or whatever. But, at the same time, we're also pretty science-minded in the way that we approach life and learning and all those sorts of things. And at the same time that he was coming at it from, kind of recompositioning his body from an anorexic state, I was coming at it from the focus of just trying to not die, if I'm being really honest. And it was funny, we started chatting, through Reddit and through Facebook and whatever, and there was this realization of how much this stuff just overlaps like a really tight Venn diagram. And you see that healthy practices around things like tracking and really understanding what you're eating and eating foods as close to the source as possible, maybe even seasonally or intentionally modulating carbohydrate intake or pulsating protein intake and those kinds of things, they start to kind of like overlap, and you realize this isn't just stuff that fat people need to be doing. And I think I get a pass for saying that. This isn't just stuff that people trying to climb out of the throes of depression and anorexic behaviors necessarily need to do. These are just behaviors that are healthy for a really large group of people. And so it kind of interestingly turned into, we came at it from two very different ends of the landscape and kind of met in the middle and realized that there's just a huge need for people to hear the stories and to understand, we weren't kissed and blessed by the genetic gods. There wasn't so many anything like that. It was hard work, screwing up, figuring it out, dusting yourself off, getting better, and trying again.
Yeah.
It's like I've been trying to grow a Matt style beard for a while, and I've just got this little thing right here in the front. I can't think it works. So I keep trying, though.
Yeah, you can try, but it's just like Luis's lever pull-ups he was pulling the other day.
Mm-hmm.
There's just some things that I don't really put a whole lot of stock in, and this is my superpower right here. So
I'll try a lever pull-up, but they just think that I'm having a seizure and call the ambulance and I'm with the gym.
Sir, are you okay?
No, I'm not okay.
So one thing to let folks know about Ketogains, one of the things that really gravitated me towards this group was the fact that it's very evidence-based, and secondly, B, it's very results-based. Mm-hmm. And so those two things seem to really be drivers for the program, for the methodology. And so can you guys explain to me, and whoever wants to take lead on this, can you guys explain to me what it is about your philosophy or your methodology that is so different from the rest of this kind of this low carb keto chasing ketones like you guys have in your byline of what not to do. Tell me a little bit about what separates you guys from the pack.
If I may, I'll start, and then Tyler can complete the sentences. So very much since okay.
I thought I was completing a sentence already.
Okay, well, since its inception, Ketogains has always been evidence-based. Why? Because that's the reason it was born. I've always been curious on the whys and the hows of things. When a thing enters my head, I like to know how it works, why it works, what are the mechanisms, or how can I apply it within different contexts. I really don't like to parrot things, right? Mm-hmm. And I go very much by the idea of if I cannot explain to someone in a very simple way how something works, it means that I don't really understand it, right? So when I started doing keto and then people started asking me, how does it work? I found out at first that I was not really well versed in at least the basic science of keto. And then to actually understand some of the basic science of keto, you also have to understand some of the basic science of nutrition, of human physiology, and so on and so forth, right? It's very much like I say to some of our clients when they want to know the mechanisms or the basis of some of our recommendations. It's you have to learn to crawl before you can run or you can jump. You have to learn how to add and how to deduct before you go into, the heavy arithmetics. So you have to have a solid foundation of certain things. So what we do, and when I say we, Tyler and me, and then eventually everyone who wants to become a Ketogains coach, and that's again also why we vouch for so many certifications, is because you have to specialize in something. But again, you have to understand the basics so that you can explain them in a very easy to follow way for everyone. People see the name Ketogains and they think that we cater to bodybuilders or very high-end fitness enthusiasts. And the reality is that our main demographic, people who actually pay for our coaching, is very much like our moms. That's the reality of the issue, or our wives. So it's women over 35 years or 40 or so that have tried all of the diets, have done all the fitness programs, and they want to get results, but they are also a little bit curious as to how to get them and why this is really working versus all the other fat diets or not so fat diets that they've tried before haven't really gotten them results. So again, it's born out of love for knowledge and to be able to explain in a very easy and concise way to almost everyone, be it from a high level to I don't want to be dismissive here, but to your mom or to your grandmother in a way that they can at least comprehend some of the basics. So, and I think that's about it from my part.
I think Luis hit the nail on the head. The biggest difference that I think that I see when I look out over the landscape of most of like the ancestral or the ketogenic sort of community is there is this intention to try and shoehorn everybody into a one-size-fits-all hat. And as a guy with a giant, ridiculously oversized head who has many, many times realized that one size does not, in fact, fit all, the reality is that doesn't always work. And when we're talking about proper context, the answers change, right? If you were trying to explain to a child who only understood addition the concept of what 2 times 4 is, the easiest way to go would be to explain it as 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, right? Mm-hmm. Rather than to try and teach some abstract concept about sequential numbers or whatever. Like, to Luis's point, reducing things down to a point where they just make sense was a huge thing. And then it turned into a situation where we realize there's a certain element of both art and science to, I want to say people always, when I say that, will go, well, way to parrot Finney. And I'm like, nope, I've been saying that since I was 17. Finney's parroting me. But there is some truth to the fact that there are things that work on paper But the finer art of being a coach or helping somebody along is to realize where they are in their own journey. Right. And to be able to look at that person and say, you're just not ready for this. You're just not in a place where you need to be doing this thing, because it seems like it'll work. And if you adhere to it, it will work, but you're not going to adhere to it. Or if you do, you're going to be miserable and you're going to hate life. Hey, maybe in the throes of postpartum depression, when you're trying to kind of get some of that baby weight off and stuff, maybe a PSMF is not exactly the best idea for you right now. It's things like that seem like common sense, but when your approach is so unilateral, there's the old adage, if your only tool is a hammer, then every problem looks like a nail.
Right.
Every client, every individual that we run across can't be a nail. Because if, the answer is not just more keto. There are, for example, lifters who do much better kind of moving in and out of ketogenic diets, either seasonally or around peaks in their training performance. It would be ridiculous of me to say, hey, you're a high-level jiu-jitsu roller. Let's put you on 20 grams a day and keep you there forever. They're going to die on the mat. Mm-hmm. Not you, Matt, but on the things that protect them.
I hope no one dies on me, especially jiu-jitsu rollers.
There you go. So, so the reality is, I think that context is really a huge thing that separates us and really generates the results that we get, where a lot of times other people have results. But I do want to comment. I've said this on a Rob Wolf podcast that never aired because his internet crashed and we didn't realize it. But it's intriguing to realize that the power of an ancestrally focused lower carbohydrate diet is, even when it's done in a stupid fashion, it still works for a while. There is a certain element of, and I use this as a tautology to say it works until it doesn't, right. But it really does work until it doesn't.
Yeah.
So, I think that would be, if I were going to paint a ridiculously long version of this, the differentiation is I don't care what your ketone levels are. I don't care that never should thy fat be below thy protein, or whatever some of these stupid non-contextual rules are that are out there. What I care about is, am I helping you to get healthier so that not only are you going to be around to see your grandchildren and hopefully your great-grandchildren grow up, are you going to be healthy enough to get in the floor and play with them? Are you going to be healthy enough to go for walks and to build those memories that are going to, affect downstream your life and your world and your people around you, to try and push a really, really unhealthy generation of people towards being healthier?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's very, very well said. And so that, I believe, is really because folks who followed my story know I started keto in kind of the mainstream keto, even though way back because I've always battled weight since I was 6 years old. In high school, I lost 130 pounds basically doing Atkins. I read New Diet Revolution, read it a couple of times, implemented it, and lost 130 pounds and kept it off for years until bad habits in grad school. And then I regained weight, was battling stuff like depression, eating disorder, all that stuff. And going back, low carb just kind of got really back on the scene with stuff like good calories, bad calories, and big fat lie, all that stuff. And so I was starting to follow the mainstream way of keto versus going back to this kind of, what I'd say, more whole foods, low carb way of doing things like Atkins had talked about. I started doing this whole super low carb, but also really high fat, and buttered coffees and all that stuff. And I did lose weight. I lost 30 or 40 pounds relatively quickly. But as you said, it works until it doesn't, and then that's exactly what happened. I lost 30 or 40 pounds relatively quickly, and then I stopped. And I stayed there, and I stayed there. And it wasn't until like a year later that I started looking at other things like, okay, something's got to give. And that it's down that further journey that I kind of discovered you guys, started reading some of the others older low carb books like the Dr. Eads's Protein Power and that type of stuff, and that's kind of what got me. And also, like you said, Finney and Volick's Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Living, and that's what kind of got me off of this super high fat bandwagon. And guess what? I started getting results again. I lost another 50 or 60 pounds.
If I may interrupt you a little bit, Matt.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit on how did you learn first about keto?
Honestly, it was through some of the I won't name names, but they talk about basically chasing ketones, and they also push later on they pushed fat bombs, and they pushed fat waters and stuff like that. So
it was just the thing that you mentioned, and you asked before, what is it that differentiate us from other groups? And this is something that it's a little bit disheartening and saddening at the same time. But this is something that I see over and over, and I think Tyler as well, is that people that are in most keto groups, most of us, and I will say us because, again, that's something that happened to me in a way, we've tried to lose fat in various different ways all through our lives, right? With different degrees of success. Some more than others, but a lot of us have tried basically all the diets, and then after a short while they stop working, or we start following the diet because it's very limiting. It's not satiating. It's not something you like. Whatever the reason, the thing is that we stop following the diet, right? So then we try or hear about keto. And most of us hear about keto from word of mouth. We see some results, and we are drawn into the diet because they sell it to us as a diet where you can eat basically whatever or whatever in amount you want without being overly restrictive. You can eat all of these foods that you have been neglected all through your life because they are bad, You can eat all the butter you want. You can eat all the bacon you want. You can eat all the cheese you want, and you won't get fat, or you will lose body weight, or whatever. And then you start doing a diet, and like you said, it works, but then it doesn't work. Right. So then when someone comes along, let's say the bad guys from Ketogains, and they tell you, hey, calories do matter. You do have to restrict yourself in a certain way. You have to be mindful with calories. Calories are not free. You've already changed your mind once. You've already got a certain degree of success. So people don't like to be proven wrong twice.
Right. That's a good point.
They already fallen in love with the idea that they don't have to count calories and that calories don't matter. And then you come again and they hear these guys that probably are not overweight or don't seem to be overweight or probably seem healthy. And they tell you, guess what? Calories do matter, or energy balance does matter in a certain way. And then you hate them for that because you know probably that it's true because you've done it and it doesn't work anymore. And then you have all these people telling you, I'm not losing fat. Eat more fat bombs. No. Don't eat fat bombs.
Lower your protein.
Protein increases gluconeogenesis, and then it turns into chocolate. So it becomes sort of first conflicting ideas. And also you don't want to be wrong twice. Nobody wants to feel a fool, right?
Right.
So now it was just sorry for interrupting you, but it's something that always, like, I'm very intrigued for this. And when I talk to people and people that have actually changed their view again, very much like you, that they did a diet, it worked for a while, then it didn't work, and then they got curious and tried something else, and now they're getting incredible results. It's again, you have to change your mind again, and most people don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, and I think it's also a situation where a lot of people want there to be a secret. They want there to be some kind of a magic I'll use pill, powder, or potion, but it's really a formula, right? A ratio or whatever that somehow unlocks, like this is some, this is some secret or some best life now, Joel Osteen level, whatever. And like the reality is it's, that's not what this is. Most of the results we get are when people drastically simplify what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And just go back to the way that our grandparents or our great-grandparents would have eaten. And so I think it's a situation where I would say I completely agree with you, Luis. There's been a lot of the results we see are from people who have done exactly what, Matt, you've done in the past, which is do something and they run headfirst into a wall. And so they talk to people and they go, oh, well, the answer is, well, you must be eating too much protein, or you must be eating too little fat, or, you need to up your ratio. Maybe you need to go 4-to-1 or 5, or do they 5-to-1? I don't even know how you'd even pull that off without steatosis just taking over, or steatoria rather. But there is just this certain element of, again, it's the hammer nail thing, right? And we get sometimes, I think, a bad rap for being honest and just saying, hey, yeah, the hormonal effects of the calories that we consume, the nature of the content of the food matters. But at the end of the day, insulin doesn't store what isn't eaten. It doesn't affect. There is no magical scenario in which if you do not overeat, being insulin resistant causes obesity. It simply doesn't. I'm not aware of any physiologic condition where that's true. The issue is, and that's why you see the insulin resistance come on as a consequence of obesity and not obesity come about as a consequence of insulin resistance.
Right.
We start to see lipid panel markers. I think LabCorp has actually got a test called an extended LPIR right now, which is a lipid panel of insulin resistance. Mm-hmm. A really good panel for early predictions of cardiovascular risk and other things. But what it really is kind of a marker for inflammatory response and the beginnings of insulin resistance long before we start to see the A1C start to be affected. And so I think it's interesting to really step back and just say, who's the bad guy in a conversation, right? The person who tells you an uncomfortable truth that you need to come to grips with, or is it the person who's willing to lie to you while shilling products all day long? Don't get me wrong. We offer services. We're not, we have conflicts of interest in that conversation too. But the truth of the matter is, as you pointed out on the call, we're results driven. At the end of the day, if the approach doesn't get results, guess what? We're going to throw it in the trash and try something until we figure out what does work for an individual. Right. People ask when we talk about the fact that we're Ketogains, and I would say fully 25%, Luis, tell me if you think my number's off, of the people that we work with are either seasonally non-ketogenic or have moved into a place where their training volume necessitates that they kind of stay right there on that ragged edge of moving in and out of ketosis.
Yeah.
More of an low-carb paleo kind of a thing.
Right.
It's funny, but and this is again for everyone who is hearing us, looking at us. Even though we are Ketogains, we are not keto zealots, and we are very open to different approaches. And basically, my plan with all my personal clients and people that I train or that I coach is to test their carbohydrate threshold. That's something that I not really say openly because people, of course, come to us for keto. But once I get in a good spot with a client, I actually start explaining to them and offering them to increase their carbs once I see that they are comfortable and they've attained a certain fat loss. So what I do normally is I increase slowly throughout, this is a period of months, very slowly their carbohydrate intake. And again, I'm not talking about giving them a donut, but more so probably 5 extra grams of green vegetables or maybe a little bit of potato here and there. Right. But in the end, clients that started with us at 25, 30 grams of net carbohydrates, they end up at about 100, 120. I have someone who is right now 150 grams of carbohydrates. And I'm talking about a woman. And you look at her, and she's about 18% body fat. She looks very much like a stage athlete. I'm not saying a female bodybuilder, but someone that you would definitely look and see as very much like a Greek sculpture. Mm-hmm. And the best part of it is that these women are, as we said before, over 40 years old. So it's not your typical 40-year-old that you see, that it's very much the norm. Mm-hmm. These are outstanding females that have achieved very much, and I'd say in most of the cases that they report, a better shape now by doing this protocol than when they were 18 or 20 years.
Right.
And I think the truth of the matter, Luis, is nobody cares what you call a diet that gets results.
Exactly. It's like with some of our clients, especially ones that I see that are already quite lean and they want to get great results, we give them their macros and I say, okay, but this is not a keto diet, because they are very much attuned to the classic ketogenic ratios, and they expect a super high fat level. Right. And then we more so go by this saying, like protein is a goal, carbohydrates are a limit, and fat is a lever. And so this lever very much will change depending on where your body composition is and your context and your goals are. Someone who probably is going to do a marathon or CrossFit and be lifting for 3 hours a day probably needs a much higher fat intake, especially if that person is lean, and also probably a higher carbohydrate intake timed around training, versus someone who probably is also quite active, but it's overweight. Why? Because that person who is overweight first is likely insulin resistant, so probably carbohydrates won't be of much use to that person. And then also that person has a lot of energy stored. So what we actually want as a priority is to harness that energy, right? No one, again, well, not no one, but most people don't really want to win a medal when they carry 30 or 60 pounds of extra baggage, right?
Right.
And the best thing that you can do to improve their chances of winning that medal is getting rid of that baggage. So priorities, we first lean them up, and then we probably can train and help them win that medal, but priorities again.
Right. What you guys are talking about makes me think of something. Your guys' delivery and your forwardness about things, it's very, the way that you guys coach your clients, and I can speak to that because I've been a client, and that is, it's very Socratic. It's very kind of stoic in a sense, that you guys seem to really fight. You guys do a great job building people up, and like you said, educating and empowering so that they can achieve. But you guys also really try to take the emotion out of things. The guilt, I guess, might be even a better word. The guilt out of things. You acknowledge it, but you really press forward for people to kind of move on. And if you make mistakes, own it and do better this next time, and you're only one change away from being where to being back on the right track. And so can you guys talk a little bit about your guys' philosophy as far as coaching?
So it's kind of interesting, like, when I step back and look at the grand scheme of things, all of the places that I failed along the way, and I'm sure Luis is probably in the same boat, were because I was still kind of hardwired to old behaviors and old ways of thinking about things. And so I was married to this vision of myself. And it was funny, as I went down this path, I realized that there were these word pictures or these things that I truly believe deep down in my core about myself. And I joke sometimes, or I'll make the comments sometimes, they kind of manifest themselves in expressions like "you always," or you never. They're always in absolutes in the back of your head, that little jerk voice that kind of chatters in the background of everybody's head. And what it loves to do is it fears change. That's how we're hardwired. I mean, if we go back to, kind of caveman mentality, change is potentially both beneficial and dangerous. And so it's why we are hardwired to be risk averse or negative averse, much more than we're wired to go and seek out.
We're much more geared towards avoiding loss than to pursue gains, is what you're
Absolutely.
saying.
And so the reality is a lot of what ends up happening with with our clients is we realize pretty quickly with them that they're in that cycle where they make one bad decision, or I even don't even like using bad or good, but we'll call it maybe poor or negative or bad as
suboptimal.
Exactly, with respect to their goals in mind, right? And they let that cascade because it's guilt, and they're absolutely guilty. I mean, let's define the term. Guilt means you did a thing. I'm guilty of a lot of things in the course of a day, some more better than others, I guess, whatever. But like the reality is they allow that guilt to transcend into a place where shame takes root, and they start saying things like maybe, you always, and, then there's this, I had a teacher one time, I was a pastor that said one time that the first thing the devil wants you to know is there's something wrong with you. The second thing he wants you to know is that you're the only one. And the third thing he wants you to know is that you're beyond repair. Because if he can effectively create those three beliefs in you, then not only will you live a defeated life, you'll never rise above or even attempt to raise your head up and think that you can do better. And so many of our clients live in this space where they're constantly punishing themselves and then punishing themselves for punishing themselves in this weird cyclical sort of a relationship, and they wind up genuinely broken. But it's not about the food. It's not about the weight. So much of what we do is lovingly referred to it as therapy through barbell, but like that's really a lot of what it is when you get honest, and iron never lies, you realize that you're weak. And then as you build that weakness up, it starts to force you to come to grips with the fact that you are capable of change. And if I'm capable of change in one area of my life, it starts to transcend itself into being capable of change in other areas of our life. I refer to it as leaking out, right? You start to get overly full in this belief that you can make a change or manifest a change, and that your choices do lead to proper outcomes. And if so, then what about my relationships with my spouse or my loved ones or my family or my coworkers or my boss or other places in your life? What about dysfunctional fixations that you have with food? And Luis talks about the idea he can always tell when somebody's emotionally connected to food because they'll refer to it in the possessive, my pizza, my beer, my whatever. And it's owned. It's not pizza, beer, vodka, whatever. Like, it's mine. And
Precious.
It's become like Schmeagol, yeah. It's like, my pizza or whatever. Like, it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. From 300 pounds and 12 years lost. But when somebody's at that place where they're just starting and they're kind of living in that ambivalence of I don't really know if I can, but I'm willing to give it a try. You get a Jillian Michaels in there shouting at them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that you can very easily read is on like one of our recommendations on bootcamp, especially for fat loss, is like we try to help to make people do not eat dairy or nuts for the duration of the bootcamp, right? Mm-hmm. And then you realize how emotional people become over the cheese and the nuts. It's like if you were taking something that was mandatory for their life, and it's like, are you really eating that much nuts and cheese as to be so important for you? It's like, I don't know, like how many nuts or how much cheese you actually eat on a given day, that it's so important that if I take it from you, you don't know what are you going to eat. It's like you're not going to be drinking water and that's it, right? you're like, it's just something that it's, again, what do you use nuts for? Very much like to distract your mind as a snack, right? And what do you use cheese for? Like mostly nobody in America, probably in Europe, eat cheese as a main dish. It's more so something to add flavor,
right,
or something you put on top of hamburgers, or probably I'd say a pizza or mac and cheese, but it's never a main dish.
right.
In some countries, it may be a dessert, but you can prepare, I don't know, like 1,000 millions different dishes that have no cheese on them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's again another like trigger word or the thing that I see when people start rebelling about that, and they haven't even started.
Mm-hmm.
You realize that it's something ingrained in there, that it's more emotional, that it doesn't have to be. It's really not about food. It's about what that food does to that person.
Right.
Well, you're stripping away layers of insulation.
Or insecurity, yeah.
Exactly, because now they're exposed. Now you're being told you can't use a food that you use as a coping mechanism to deal with the anxiety or stress or whatever. And this is the only thing you've known. Now you just have to sit in it.
Mm-hmm.
That's super uncomfortable. Not only are you going to have to sit in it, now you're going to get up at 4 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon and go to the gym. And we're going to make you, to some degree, more uncomfortable. And honestly, I don't even mind people getting frustrated. Luis talks about, that anger, that venom about nuts and dairy. Be upset. That's okay. Use it to fuel. Be pissed at me. I'm okay with that, right? Like I'm good with that. Go bang out a workout and then come back to me in 2 weeks, 14 pounds down and 18 inches lost. And that happens frequently. Mm-hmm. And tell me if you're still upset with me or what you're upset with me about. And I've honestly had clients reach out and say, hey, I wanted to punch you in the face. What did that do? Made me go to the gym and work out harder. Good. And where are we now? I never thought I'd see this. This is the weight that's on my driver's license. I've never seen it. I never thought I'd see this weight again. And then they drop that weight. And then they realize something, like now they have this secondary frustration, which is I feel like I'm living almost like an imposter. And so it becomes kind of that second stage of coaching, is to help somebody to transcend out of a place where now they're having to live. They've gotten over the discomfort of not having coping foods. Now they have to come to grips with dealing with all the brokenness of all this stuff, all the beliefs they have about themselves that are only true because the choices that they've made in their lives have manifested themselves to make them true. And that's some, stuff after years of digging around in my brain. And you mentioned the Stoic stuff. A lot of this, the early Stoics especially, would talk about, things are going to happen and they are not good or bad inherently. Beliefs are neither good nor bad inherently. They are only good or bad in the context of how you interpret them and the outcomes that derive themselves. Biblically, the Bible says that wisdom is born out, or wisdom is proven by her children. Like, whether something is good or bad, wise or unwise, is going to be manifest in what happens years and years and years down the road, or thousands of decisions over and over again. At the end of the day, do I really care whether somebody eats, some nuts on Christmas dinner or whatever, or has, a piece of cheese with grandma as she's passing or something? I mean, it'd be horrible, but like maybe it's something from their childhood. And I actually had that happen with a client. It's at the most 1/365th of your year. I don't care. What are you going to do with the other 364 days? What are you going to do with the other 3,000 decisions that you make every 24 hours? And how are we going to pull the things that you do autopilot that are manifesting negative outcomes and bring them back into the landscape? And so I tell people all the time, it's about the diet and it's about the exercise, but it is so not about the diet and the exercise. And that's the part that I think really frustrates some people early on. And then when it clicks and it registers with them, they realize that, oh my God, this has become a part of who I am and what I do, because it makes me closer to what I really want to be and what I really believe that I was intended or made to be on this earth.
So what do you guys think of this progression? This kind of staging around comfort of starting off uncomfortable, being uncomfortable, progressing to a stage of comfortable being uncomfortable, as in saying, I know this sucks, I know this is painful, I'm tired, but I'm okay with it, and then eventually becoming to a point of comfortable being comfortable. Because it seems like that is the progressive flow over time that a lot of folks have. That, oh, you took my nuts and dairy away, the sky is falling. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about the mechanisms of why nuts and dairy we don't recommend. But it starts off, the sky is falling, you took my nuts, not my nuts, but you took my cheeses away. And
we've never taken any... No.
But but you've taken nuts and cheeses away, and they have this very visceral emotional response to that. And or when somebody just enrolls in boot camp for the first time, and it's a heck of a lot of information, and Tyler, you have a video on this being a bit overwhelming, and it seems like they're just swimming in all of this stuff. From going to that point of uncomfortable being uncomfortable to the point of comfortable being uncomfortable, that they're making the progress. Yes, it's still a grind. Yes, they have crappy days still, but it's starting to take hold of that. That is who they are now, and it's becoming just pattern of this is what I do. To the point of uncomfortable being comfortable, meaning they're losing the weight, they're feeling good, they're looking good, they may be getting some good or bad vibes from people or feedback from people saying, oh, you look great, or oh, you're too skinny, but they're still not quite comfortable being this new version of themselves, to lastly being comfortable in their own skin and feeling good about the progress that they made, and not necessarily maintaining, but because hopefully people are always kind of pushing forward, but they finally feel like they've made it, and they've become who they've always wanted to be. Can you guys talk to me a little bit about that progression? At least that's how I see it. Being in boot camps and studying psychology and transformation, that's kind of the progression that I see. Do you guys agree with that, or what are your guys' thoughts on that?
I'm just are my trainee. A reputation of being, and it's very much because I may not be the coach you want, but I'm the coach you need. I say things like they are. I don't like to sugarcoat things. And so maybe at the start, some may be a little afraid of me. They may find a little bit my style a little bit rude. But then over time, when they get to know me, they become actually grateful. And it's because, again, I don't like to sugarcoat things. I would just want to keep it simple for them to understand that everything has a consequence. And if you want results, you have to do the work. It's not like you cannot have a certain food, but it's like if you have it, then you will not get results. And you have to understand that, and this is a saying that I have, it's your calories and your macros are like money. Like if you spend them on something that is not really worth it, then you're probably going to have to repay it sooner or later, or you're not going to have macros available for something else. So if you're spending them on something, on a craving, for example, then you overspend, and then you're going to be probably hungry for the rest of the day or for other days because you have to save and repay those macros that you overspent, right? And so I try to make my trainees responsible and teach them in a way very much like if they were small children, that every action that they take will have to they have to become again responsible in what they do and not to succumb to their whims. And if they do, how to recover gracefully and not by hating themselves, because one of the usual modus operandi of all dieters is that, okay, they binge and they say, okay, I've done it, I might as well do it and go, eat the whole enchilada for 3 days or 4, and then they punish themselves and go back to one day of not eating nothing and then doing lots of cardio, and maybe that works for 1 day, but then what they did is just they overtaxed themselves, not only physically but also mentally. Mm-hmm. So they drain all the willpower they have in 1 day, and they binge again. Right. So they get into this spiral of self-hate, self-loathing, overtraining that only ends up bad. And this is one of the reasons that, or one of the ways that you get into an eating disorder. You binge, purge until this becomes a habit, right? Or let's say that, because this is also that it's very usual, you binge and then you purge and then you maintain. So then you rationalize that this is a good way to diet, while it's really not. You have to be binging and purging, be it with exercise or by really, going off. So again, I think that one of the best things that we do is that, because we've been there personally, we've had some of these issues ourselves and some of our coaches. Well, we know how to read very well people, and we know how to know when someone is in that place, and we know how to guide them out of that place even before they actually hit rock bottom, right? Before they get there.
Right.
So one thing I would add here, just as a thought, is the intention is never to just strip away everything from somebody and leave them completely exposed and raw to the elements, right? I mean, that's how somebody dies of exposure. That's not what we're after. But over time, we talk about within the camp structure this idea of operating in both, both radical grace and radical honesty. We will not lie to you because it makes you feel good. Because you have enough people in your life who are enabling you to make poor choices and telling you whatever it is they think that you want to hear because they don't want to hurt your feelings. At the end of the day, that's not how we get results. And so we are being paid by you to be, to Luis's point, the coach you need, not the coach you want, right? The person who tells you something that is true, even if it hurts your feelings or makes you think grandma's lying to you or whatever else, right? I think it's just important that people understand that it's about very calculated and intentional stripping away of those things over time. And I think people want there to be, and I mentioned the whole magic pill or powder thing earlier, people want there to be one simple answer. They want me to give them one piece of feedback that's going to transform, like it's some kind of obnoxious clickbait coaching, right? You one simple trick to permanently lose all your body fat. And like, the truth of the matter is, you know what it is? It's 10,000 days of sitting in progressively more uncomfortable, honest conversations and learning how to love yourself in spite of it, and learning how to forgive yourself for the days when you did the best that you could in spite of the circumstances or the condition that you found yourself in, right? And not allowing yourself, like Luis said, to get into that cycle of like self-flagellation where you go from completely, 150 miles an hour to dead stop, then beating yourself up for stopping and then trying to go 150 miles an hour again, when the reality is if you just do the dadgum speed limit, you'd eventually make your way there with a whole lot less frustration and having burned a whole lot less gas in the process.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's that natural that honesty. It comes from a good place, even though people don't want to necessarily acknowledge that. But it's coming from a place of integrity and love, honestly. And a lot of folks, even though it can seem cold or it can seem rude or it's never hostile. It's very matter of fact, and it's because as coaches, you guys care enough to cut through the BS and tell somebody when they're hurting themselves or when they're not treating themselves the best that they could. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right. So, we've talked quite a bit about the philosophy and the methodology of Ketogains. You guys, we're coming at the end of 2018 here, and this year seems to have been a very benchmark year for you guys. You guys reached over 100,000 people in the private Facebook group. I've seen you guys lecturing more. Got to see you guys on stage at Low Carb USA, and I know you guys have been to other places as well. PaleoFX, I believe, FitCon, or KetoCon. I can't remember all the ones you guys have been to this year. But you guys have been lecturing more. Boot camps have really taken off even more. You guys even have a new product launches as far as a coaching thing, as far as a supplement thing. We want to get into all of that about what 2018 has been to you guys and what's on the docket for 2019. So to kind of give this a little bit of flow, first and foremost, one of the things you guys have announced are changes to your website, just your basic Ketogains.com website. Tell the listeners a little bit about that and what's going on there.
So we spent a good deal of time really stepping back and asking ourselves kind of, we're encouraging our clients to try and be better and to do better and to think differently about the way that they live their lives. And we really said, what are the places where we operate where we're falling short of that mark or that measure in-house, right? The website that we had, and by the way, I apologize, my Labrador Retriever has decided to attack her toy. So if you hear squeaking, it's that. We really wanted to make sure that the website lived up to or gave people a sense of the intentionality of everything else that we do. And one of the struggles that we've had is that as we've grown as a coaching organization, as a company, was that we just kept trying to kind of tack on more and more and more information and to take what was originally kind of a blog and turn it into a place where people could get information about services that we offer and things that we do. And realistically, we've reached a point where we just had to step back and say, this really doesn't work in that respect, right? We need to do better. And so we interviewed and reached out to more people than I can possibly imagine we ever want to go through again, trying to find somebody that really got the vision of what we were trying to accomplish and really was on board with, with getting in the boat with us and rowing in that direction. And believe it or not, trying to redesign a website from the ground up that has as much stuff as ours does is way more difficult than I would have thought it would have been. Luis, I don't know if you're going to add anything to that, but that's kind of my take on it.
Very much, you hit the nail on the head with that one.
So you guys wanted to be a little bit more of a true kind of reflection of what you guys do and what you guys are offering.
Very much so.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So, well, you got the website coming underway. Starting here in a couple weeks, we have you guys have another boot camp starting the 7th, January 7th. You guys have made quite a bit of changes to that coming up as far as the length of time and how people sign up to, and even some extended recurring opportunities. Tell my listeners a little bit about what's coming on there.
So Okay, well, I'll start again. You can connect the dots later, Tyler. So yeah, apart from the website, we're also going to start increasing our presence in Latin America. So this is it's funny, but even though I'm from Mexico and I live here and I speak Spanish most of the time when I'm not speaking with clients or doing some interviews or etc. We've left Latin America a little far behind, and I think it's time to also increase our presence there because there's a lot of need. Like Tyler likes to say that the biggest export from the United States to Mexico is diabetes.
Right.
And basically that's true. We're one of the most overweight nations now, and very much I'd say that probably 7 out of 10 adults right now in Mexico and probably in Latin America are overweight. And I'd say that 80% of them have or are going to be diabetic within a few years, right? So if there's also one thing that I have to give back to my country and to Latin America is also try to reach them out and help them in any way possible. So that's something that we have for next year. But also by coaching lots of clients, we've, and this is something funny, we've seen that, we teach them a lot of things to them from mindful eating, strength training, but also we teach them about how to use Excel and Google Docs and lots of other stuff that they should not be doing. And this is something that, we get lots of comments from clients. And again, let's remember that most of our clients are women over 50 or something that are not, I'm not saying that they are computer illiterate, but they really should not be, they don't work at a tech company, and it's not their obligation to be a spreadsheet savvy, right? Mm-hmm. And because Tyler and I are nerds and we love numbers, a lot of our the way we get the clients, we review the client's progress is by having them input in a very easy to do for us, again, for people who work on computers and or corporate, input their data on some spreadsheets. For a lot of people who are not familiar to them, it can be also another barrier of entry. So what we decided to do is make it easy and make it easy for people to actually be coached by us and don't have to get a degree on Excel and to send us their data, etc. So we a portal and an app that is going to be released by modules, but the main coaching volume is something we're going to unveil come January, so that people are going to have a very easy time on supplying their information to us. So it's actually going to be less of a work or of a core, something that you're going to be able to do on your phone or on a computer or everything or everywhere that you have access to the internet, and just see your macros, write down what you ate, your exercises, get in contact with your coach, etc., without having to learn a lot of Excel or whatever, right? So just in one portal, everything right there in place. And then we will have another few surprises during each quarter of the year, as we will be releasing new and updated modules that will be, we like to say, the One Ring, the app to rule them all, fitness related. That's something that we will unveil in time, but it's what's in the works very much. Oh yeah, and also electrolytes.
Oh yeah, that thing.
Oh yeah,
that thing.
Yeah. So you guys
on the head there.
Oh, what's that?
I said no. Luis hit the nail squarely on the head. Exactly what this is about. This is about trying to drive down that technical barrier of entry for a lot of our clients, where they just, they didn't want to trade emails. They didn't want to have to learn Google Sheets or Excel or whatever. And quite frankly, if they're putting forth the effort to get better, then we need to be reciprocating that back. And so that was really the driver there.
Wonderful.
And electrolytes.
And electrolytes. So speaking of, it's got electrolytes. Tell us a little bit more about that.
It's not round though.
It's what plants crave.
It's what plants crave.
So here's the reality. Almost every product that we saw that was on the market commercially available sucks. In some capacity or other, it either had unnecessary carbohydrate added to it for reasons that they're just beyond me, or the composition of the electrolytes was poor, or the actual compound itself was a poorly bioavailable version of a particular electrolyte, or whatever the rationale was. They just all kind of aimed and sort of missed the mark for the most part. And I was talking, we were talking sitting at Rob Wolf's table when we were both out in Reno for a meeting about this, and Rob was like totally bearish. He was like, it's just effing salt. Literally, he used the F word, but it's verbatim. It's like, nobody should buy this. And I'm like, but here's the reality. Do you know what I do on a day-to-day basis for training? And Luis is not too far off. Like, I've joked sometimes that I feel like the guy making meth in my bathtub with a boat oar and a lab coat on, like just the background, like the witches from Shakespeare, right? Double toil and trouble. Or like, because you got to go buy a milligram scale, because using an actual gram scale at best is going to get you 200 to 300 milligrams off, and you multiply that by 2 or 3 doses a day, and now you're almost a gram unsure about which direction or exactly what that ratio is. It's really a convenience product for a lot of us, or people that don't want to be 20 minutes or 30 minutes a day standing in front of a milligram scale, scraping some of the salt off and adding a little bit more on little bitty scoops, and and quite frankly aren't really comfortable doing that in the first place. And so we stepped back and we were like, well, we should do this. And Rob said, y'all are nuts. And I said, just watch how many times per day people ask us about things that are related to electrolytes, and watch how many times the answer will be, hey, I tried what y'all said 2 weeks ago, and it's like the lights came on. Mm-hmm. And every time that happens, in the back of my head, I'm such a dork, I immediately go, no, friend, the electrolytes went on.
Buzzing.
Exactly, like complete dad jokes, and I'm sorry, but like, but we literally sat down and we were talking about this, and so he starts looking, and he was like, wait a minute, I kind of get what you're saying now. And the truth of the matter is, you could do this yourself. Absolutely. If you want to be the guy with the milligram scale dosing all this stuff, we give you the recipe on that. Was something we were adamant about up front. Here's the formula, go nuts. Mm-hmm. But if you'd rather simplify things and know that it's accurate and know that you're getting a proper dose when you need it for airplane travel or for pre-gym training or for whatever, to kind of supplement your total electrolyte need, here it is. And I can guarantee you the only carbohydrates in it are from citric acid. They're not from added sugars that are stupidly in there for no reason. The ratios and stuff are not, unnecessarily wonky because you're trying to avoid some kind of policy that makes it a food additive as opposed to a supplement or whatever. Like, we just wanted to make a competent, honest product that told you what it was, that gave you what you paid for, and that in many, many cases, especially for low carbohydrate athletes or for people who are just feeling really run down because they don't like eating heavily salted foods and that sort of thing, here's an avenue or an outlet for you to do that for not a whole lot of money per day, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's great. So we talked about that being electrolytes. What's the name of it?
So
it's called the element.
Yes, it's element.
The missing element.
Mm-hmm. So somebody asked me today, so what does LMNT stand for? And so I just had to put the little E's And so then he's like, oh, I get it now. And I'm like, look, it's a play. Like, honestly, they're not there because they're busy doing electrolyte things, right? Like electrons. like, this is what happens when you put Rob Wolf and I in a conversation. We become biochemistry dorks and physiology dorks, and all of a sudden the E's are off doing the things that negative ions are supposed to do, right? So so it's LMNT. It's Element Recharge is the product, yes. And it's
awesome.
drinklmnt.com.
Yeah, not drinktmnt.com, but drinklmnt.com.
No, that's painful. When you get to Donatello, the bow staff gets stuck in your It's uncomfortable.
No, very, very cool. So, speaking of you guys joining with Rob, you guys have something going on with his masterclass as well. And you guys just announced that and are working some things out with that to roll out pretty soon. Tell us a little bit about that.
Luis, you want to go with this one?
Yeah, you can start that one, and then I'll probably talk about the Keto Reto.
Since this was my idea. So one of the things I realized, or that Luis and I've been talking about for a long time, is this issue where there are people who want to get this right and they're completely lost, but for whatever reason, whether it's because of current health situations or access to a gym or whatever, they're just in a place where they want to start right. They don't necessarily need the hands-on kind of tough love approach that a lot of the boot camp stuff is predicated on. They just need to get from kind of starting to postmark A, or right. And we genuinely like the keto masterclass that Rob put out there. And one of the things that we got back from people was, this is great, and I really like this information, but it's really not about understanding it. It's about having somebody where I can ask questions and get accountability. And because I'm stupid, they've been telling us that for 6 months, and the whole time, Luis is nodding his head at me being stupid, and that's okay. That's back to the radical honesty part of this whole thing. The reality is, I just didn't see it, and finally, it just kind of snapped, and I was like, "Hey, why don't we? Surely there is something we could do with this, where we could wrap a coaching intervention, or maybe a meal prep intervention around that, where people can be, provided with meal plans and instructions on how to eat the foods appropriate to the macros they should be eating, coached around this kernel of kind of a 3-week kickoff of getting it right." And so we sat on that for a while and went, okay, that's surely, and we didn't really do anything with it, because it's, we were sitting there going, well, who would lead it? Where would we go? What would we do? And then it finally snapped into focus that we have 2 people coaching for us in the form of Amy Owsley and Melissa Johnson, who do coaching under the banner of a website at kickstartingketo.com, who are fantastic at taking people who are just brand spanking new to things and helping to kind of set them on the right path. And it was, wait a minute, well, if we've got these resources at our disposal and they're really good at doing this, and we've got this thing that's really something that we think is really good, and we've got Stephanie Harrell, who's really good at making super simple recipes for people, why are we not putting these pieces together? And Luis kind of, I'm pretty sure, looked at me and was like, "You idiot, I've been waiting 3 months for you to come to this conclusion," because he's always way down the rabbit beyond me. He was like, "Okay, let's do it." And I was like, "Oh, shoot, that was the easiest yes I've gotten to all week. Let's do this now." And honestly, we reached out to Rob and his wife, and we said, "Guys, we'd like to do this." And again, I'm starting to get frustrated with Rob being bearish on ideas that we have initially, but I said, just let me have them build a syllabus around this, and I want to send it to you, and if you don't like it, I'll never bring it up again. And they put together a 3-week syllabus, and I sent it over, an outline of kind of what they were going to work through each day. And I sent it over to him, and he was like, okay, when do we start? It was that fast. When he saw the content and the quality of the approach that they were going to take to this, there just stopped being any of those concerns or any of those worries. And I think that that's something we always want to be the hallmark of what we do at Ketogains, is to make sure that people can at least go away saying they did exactly what they said they were going to do when they did it with integrity and high quality. And if we can't do that, then we shouldn't be a part of that thing at all.
Right.
And I think that's part of why we're so intentional and so selective about what products we do actually recommend or endorse for people. And we've gotten, for all intents and purposes, almost hate mail from time to time from people who have sent us products to try, and we haven't said anything. And I want to say, honestly, I didn't enjoy your product at all. And I'm pretty sure you didn't want me going in social media and being like, this product is terrible, and it shot my blood sugar up, 80 points and, in 30 minutes. Like, pretty sure you just rather me stay quiet. My grandmother used to say that a reputation is something it takes a lifetime to achieve and a second to destroy. I think that's the important part for all of this stuff with regard to the electrolytes, with regard to trying to improve the website, with regard to launching the portal and continuing, already investing in continuing to add modules and portals and capabilities there. Coming back around to this program, which is actually called Mastering the Masterclass, was that not only did it have to be functional, but it really had to set people on the right path. It wasn't just a means to somebody's pocketbook, but instead left them in a better place than they were when they started, more well-equipped to actually go forward, whether that's into a boot camp, whether that's into one-on-one coaching with the, coach at their local gym, whether this is as far as they want to go and they're just trying to kind of lose some vanity weight or whatever, and they want to figure this thing out. Whatever it is, this is a great first step for people. And we've actually, interestingly, had a number of people who are actively enrolled in the January boot camp who said, hey, I want to be a part of this thing too. Can I do it? And I went to Luis and I'm like, wait a minute. How are we going to have two sets of coaches? Yes, I guess. We'll figure this out. We're actually about to launch the first of those groups on the 31st of January. And I think the second one is going to launch the 14th. I believe it's the week after the first launch date of the upcoming January boot camp. So again, at the expense of sounding a little bit marketing driven, if people have questions, reach out to us. It's info@ketogains.com or through the website or through Facebook, or send Luis a carrier pigeon. He responds to those pretty quickly.
Yeah, so basically, apart from what Tyler said, and because of we saw the need to help people get a starting point or ground zero before they tackle our boot camps, because again, apart from what Tyler said, the idea from the masterclass, from mastering the masterclass, came from, we saw that our best starting clients already came very well prepared from having taken the masterclass, and those that have taken the masterclass, some of them have also been pre-coaching one way via Melissa or Amy. And so we decided very much, why don't we do a guided tour for that with the best practices from Ketogains and from the coaching of Melissa and Amy. So that's very much the reason and the idea behind the Mastering the Masterclass program. And then also, again, going back to growing in Latin America, we're going to unveil come January very much the Spanglish version of Mastering the Masterclass in a way that is called the Reto Keto, which is very much like, how will you say the keto there? Or like, yeah, I think that translates very well. The keto there, like we dare you to try keto for 45 days. So it's a mix of what Rob does with a little bit of our interpretations, because we've taken a little bit of some liberties and modified a little bit of the content as to fit our best practices. And that's something that we're going to unveil come January from the next year. And also, I think it's going to be a huge hit because it very much
I want to say
aimed
Tyler,
or targeted for
Rob
the Latin American population,
and
but directly speaking to
he would be
our potential clients, which are again
especially
females over 30 years.
Coaching program around kind of his baby, because I know that Keto Masterclass. I love that thing. I've been through it, and we've sponsored it here on the show and stuff, and so I can understand kind of the hesitation of giving somebody else that kind of control over your creation, but I see it kind of being like you guys a little bit about with who you take on, when you add. When you do add stuff to the boot camp, when you add more coaches, when you add mods, when you add admins and all that stuff, there is quite a vetting process that you guys do, because you want to make sure that that's going to have integrity and that they're going to uphold the values and the integrity that you guys have instilled in your product. And so, I mean, I can kind of understand where Rob would be a little bit bearish, but I also think that that's a testament that once he kind of saw the syllabus, that he's like, okay, when do we get started? So.
Yeah, I will say this and understand that once a man has choked you and made you almost poop yourself on a jiu-jitsu mat, there's a certain level of trust that happens there. But I do, and by the way, that's Rob choking me because he's a way better player at jiu-jitsu than I've ever thought about being. But, that's exactly right. One of the things that we're always so nervous about with adding people is making sure that they're people that are in it for the right reasons, and that the partnerships and collaborations and things that we do are hugely intentional, right? Like we want to make certain that this doesn't come across as, we found somebody who's, out here, he's got some, social media presence, and now he launches a product and kabam, it's like, oh, now we're selling it for, whatever. Like, you can find 100 of those online, and that's not who we are, and you're welcome to go do those. And, there's a story from a marketing class that I took in grad school. It's the only marketing class that I took because I realized that I'm not marketing driven. That's Luis's area of expertise. I'd rather stick my head in a toaster than to do a lot of marketing stuff. But there's a story about a guy who was a barber for a long time, and across the street, someone opened up a barber shop and put signs up that said haircuts $10, and he was wringing his hands and trying to figure out what he was going to do because he couldn't compete with $10 haircuts. And so son has a brilliant idea, and so the next morning he runs to the print shop and shows up that afternoon with a sign outside the door that says, "We fix $10 haircuts." And there is a certain kind of truth to the idea that go try those things, and when they stop working because they're flash in the pan nonsense, come talk to us. And if we're not your cup of tea, we can recommend some other people who get it and understand and appreciate context that may approach things differently. But at the end of the day, everything that we want to do and every partnership that we take on has to be done from a place of integrity and intention, focused chiefly on, are we going to get the results that we so seek for people?
Absolutely.
Because
so, like I said, with 2018, you guys saw a lot of growth.
We're pure meritocracy, right? If we don't get results,
what's coming up on the docket for 2019 as far as What are your guys' goals? I know you guys have some speaking engagements. I'll see you guys at Paleo FX. I'll be down there for that. But tell us a little bit about what's in store for 2019.
Awesome. Well, very much, I think we've gone mostly through the most important things, that is the release of the app. The app is going to help us coach more people in a way that our services are not going to be more so with the quality that our clients are used to. Lots of speaking gigs as well. Probably Low Carb USA, Paleo FX. Probably will be at
We'll be at FitCon.
FitCon, yes. I don't know if Denver will also have Denver.
Yeah, there's a few of those.
Yeah.
One thing that I guess we haven't covered here, since we're in the process of unveiling all of our plans for 2019, is an interesting one where some bearded fellow from Kansas is actually going to jump on board and start doing something. So we're at Low Carb USA last year, and Matt walks over to me and he says, "Hey." I said, "Hey." He said, "Can we go grab some coffee or something tomorrow morning?" And I said, "Sure." And normally I would have just said, "Let's do it tonight," but wine may or may not have already been consumed at that point, and so I'm not a big fan of coffee after wine. It's a weird taste. But I said, "Sure." And so we met at a little coffee shop around the corner, and he said, "Hey, I love what I do." And I'm like, "Okay, that's good." And the whole time I'm sitting here thinking, I'm not equipped to handle existential crises. Like I'm not wired that way. And he said, "I love what y'all do." Again, I was like, "Good." Like, where exactly am I going at this point? And he said, "I like helping people. What would I have to do to become more involved in working with you guys on an ongoing basis?" And I said, "Well, first things first, let's get you into kind of our moderator / admin role and figure out if this is something that's going to make you want to pull your hair out. Because it does take a certain personality type to kind of do that, right? Or whether this is something that you genuinely enjoy." And so basically since July, Matt's actually been one of our moderators in the group, and he hasn't yet pulled his hair out, as evidenced by the video, for those of you that are watching this. And we have a need. And so one of the things that we had talked about, and we actually reached out to Matt about a week and a half ago, or 2 weeks ago, I guess now, I said, "Hey, I want you to talk it over with your wife. Family always comes first in these conversations. But if you're still interested in helping people, I know you've got your heart set on becoming a coach, or you've already gotten certified and you want to start doing more of it." And so the Bearded Wonder here is going to become, I guess, our newest Ketogains coach starting in January. And so be ramping him up and getting him engaged in some of the boot camp activities, and that will be an ongoing thing until such time as he gets tired of playing with us, I guess. So, so new information for what's coming in 2019: 100% more beards in the coaching staff at Ketogains. That's what's coming.
Yeah, you just hop the flights or drive over to my little corner of Kansas.
You can also
look you up. So
yeah, you can
I
get
I want
your
to say
diet,
how
your coaching,
how
your
grateful I
training,
am,
your macros, and your
how
team.
honored I am that you guys have taken me on as one of your coaches, and I really look forward to doing the things. It's really helping out because not only the one thing to kind of end on with going back to boot camps is where I'm at in my little corner of the world, is there's only so much impact that I can make here. And really, a lot of my profession, 95% of it is due to diet and lifestyle. And so it's very reactionary based, waiting till people develop disease or dysfunction and then treating it, versus if, I look at a well-formulated ketogenic diet, and one of the things that I can recommend to it for my patients is because I see it as an optimal dental diet as well. And the fact that what you guys are achieving with boot camp is pretty incredible, that I feel like that's my next step, is to try to get on the front end of it. Like you guys were talking about diabetes before, and one of that's the big call to action for this thing was to help get information about how to manage or reverse a diet and lifestyle that is beneficial at managing or somewhat even reversing these kind of diabetes related epidemics. And so what you guys are achieving in boot camp does exactly that, and the proof's in the pudding. And yes, you have a lot of other clinics, and you have a lot of health organizations that have kind of started taking on a low carbohydrate and ketogenic way to tackle this problem, and I kudos to them, and I hope the best for their success, because when they succeed, we all succeed as a country. But what you guys are doing, for the results that you're getting, and honestly for the investment, for the price, I mean, there's so much more ROI through these boot camps than that I think still so many people don't know about. Does that make sense? Yeah, so like I said, I'm super excited to be a part of it, and really looking forward to 2019. And like I said, hanging out with you guys down in Austin and
it does.
San Diego again. So, all right, guys. Well, we're at about an hour and a half. That wasn't too shabby. We didn't go into the weeds a whole lot, right? I mean, we could still go. No, I'm just joking. But anyways, if you guys, with one thing I want to get from you guys when we wrap up, or in an email later,
it short of 2 hours. I'm kind
of
impressed.
The links. I mean, their main website, Ketogains.com. The boot camp site will be Ketogains Bootcamps, multiple gains, multiple camps, Ketogains Bootcamps.com. To get signed up for the electrolyte drink, that is it drinklmnt.com? Is that right? So okay, cool. So drinklmnt.com. Trying to think of anything else. Oh, you guys, I'll put your guys' handles on like your Instagram handles. I'll put that all on the show notes. So anybody wants to follow you guys, anybody who wants to join the Ketogains page, if you do join the Ketogains Facebook page, answer all 3 questions in their entirety and give good answers, or else I will deny you. I am a stickler for that. So
I have to say, the funniest comment I have ever seen came through today, and I felt so emotionally associated, because I've been there. Was it the person who said, because I'm a fat sack of crap or something, was their answer to the question of why they wanted to join Ketogains? It's like, man, that is full on honesty, but at the same time, I'm like, dude, I just want to give you a hug. Somebody needs a good touch, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Welcome to the tribe, what? So, definitely make sure you give us an indication that you're not a robot or a spam bot, because
I, for one, welcome our robotic overlords. So.
And if
Luis, you got anything else, bud?
Bot, it's cool that you've become sentient. Please don't take us over.
All right, guys. Well, you guys take care. And for listeners to the show, thank you for another great episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you finished 2018 strong.
Stay salty.
Looking forward to being back here in 2019. Right. So until then, take care, everybody.
See you. And have a happy new year, everyone.
Absolutely. See you guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you.